All right. And we can check on my channel if it's actually doing it or not. I'll check on my phone, but I turned all the sound off on it because it's like really irritating for the delays, you know.
Do you want me to go check?
All right. All right. Let's go back here to us. Got it. We're live. They wanted to make sure that we knew that. Okay. Can I hear you still?
Can you? Hi, how are you doing?
No, I muted something. Okay. Okay, that should be good now. I was having some weird technology thing. It says live on YouTube, but I think we're good now. Let me refresh down on the page. Oh, yeah, it's showing that we're live. So we're good. All right. Hi, Robyn.
Hi, Liana. How are you?
I am so good. It's so fun to be seeing your face when we talk because we're always on the phone or on Clubhouse or some like way where we don't actually see each other's faces and expressions. So this is like taking it to the next level with fun, right?
It is. I love it. It's actually really different. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is different. Someone was telling me, they were like, oh, are you nervous to do that live stream? And I was like, no, but I mean, I know I don't need to be. Like, we talk all the time. And then just as I was getting ready to log into Zoom, I was like, oh, it is kind of different. And I had forgotten about that. So anyways, that's just a new thing for us. So I hope that our viewers and our previous listeners will want to become viewers as well and enjoy it, because YouTube is actually my favorite platform because I just enjoy being able to see people when I have my eyes available, but it also is a good audio platform. You know, if you're doing dishes or whatever, you can put your earbuds in and listen to things, even if you can't always view. And this is that type of live stream for sure, where people can listen if they want, or they can watch us if they have the ability to do that at the same time. But all right, well, thanks for.
It's a great platform. It's a great medium. I agree.
Yeah, I like it. I think I am just such a visual person too, that it helps me to, like, even on Clubhouse, the way that there's like the that you can actually see who's talking, when they're talking, all of that. I need that, or I kind of get lost in the conversation. I think that's why it's been so popular. So yeah. All right, let me pull back then. So hi, anybody who's watching us live. Also, this is going to be on the channel as a replay forever. So I'm sure people will be watching way after the fact. It's February 11th, 2022 in real time, but who knows when people will actually be watching this later. So my name is Liana. This is my YouTube channel. I've mostly been sharing things about like plant-based eating and homeschool family lifestyle and stuff, but I'm really excited now to do a series of interviews with homeschool influencers and have these conversations about what is it really like homeschooling and what are the real tips that you need to know, and also just build community as well, like have the time to hang out. So Robyn and I have been doing rooms on Clubhouse together. If you're not familiar with Clubhouse, it's an audio only social media community where people develop these clubs and they're topic based generally. And then you get to have really awesome conversations with people. So it's almost like a homeschool support group. I feel like we run on Clubhouse, and we have 4 rooms a week. And so that's actually how I met Robyn. But now what we're going to do is talk with Robyn over here on YouTube about her life as this unschool mom, and also the work she does in the community. So I first met you on Clubhouse, but then I went and started listening to your podcast, Honey, I'm Homeschooling the Kids. And that was awesome too, to begin to learn more about you that way and all the resources that you have. So I just want to say welcome for being here, Robyn. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. This is great.
So for people that maybe don't follow you, I'm wondering if you could tell a little bit about who you are, kind of like the way we do the Clubhouse intro, and just so people know you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Robyn Robertson. Hello, everyone. And I am an unschooling mom to 2 kids. So my kids are 15 and 12 now, and we've been homeschooling or unschooling for 9 years and counting. So right now, this is being recorded in 2022. So depending when you watch this, that's where our numbers are at, I guess you could say at that time. We live in Canada. I I was born in Canada. My dad's from Jamaica, and we moved a lot over the years. And when I was a kid, and then once I left school, I continued to travel a lot. But, I call Canada home pretty well. So that's where we are now in Northern Alberta. So our lifestyle is, it's pretty rural and quiet at the moment, although we've lived in big cities and islands and other places. But our journey started, we were living in Canada and we wanted to go traveling again with our kids because we had been doing it so long, my husband and I as a couple and individually. And we just felt that we wanted to kind of get back to the basics and do a few things that, we had always wanted to do with our kids. And we realized, maybe it's one of those things where now it's a good time to try it and see how it goes. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, we can just go back home to what we were doing, kind of thing. And so that's how we started homeschooling. So that was over 9 years ago, and here we still are today. I didn't expect it to be this long, but I'm still thankful for the learning every day.
It sounds like you went into it just being like, we'd like to travel. So obviously the kids can't go to school every day if we want to travel. So let's just try something else. But for a little bit is what it sounded like you were going to do. Did you have any thought that it was going to be your new lifestyle to be with your kids all the time?
Not at all. I didn't know, I guess. I thought that originally I thought it would be 6 months. And then I thought maybe it would be a year, but we definitely would most likely go back to where we were. So yeah, I didn't know.
So you're probably home. Yeah. So you're probably homeschooling from that mindset though, too, like that your kids had to get back into school. So how did you guys actually approach doing schooling to begin with?
Interestingly enough, I didn't approach it as my kids are going to be back in school, so I had to keep them ready to be back in school. I just approached it more from this is what I know, so this is what we'll continue to do. And I think because we had already chosen to travel, which is already something very different, I knew that our daily life was going to look different and that it also was an adventure we were choosing. So I think that did change things because I knew it was a new adventure. So why not do things differently? Why not make it a chance to, do different things in our family life as well? So I think that definitely changed things. But at first, I did do the class, like the traditional school approach where we had subjects. I had my phone that I timed the alarm when a subject was done, and then we move on to the next one. But the expectation or what we had said from the beginning was that we would get up and do our thing, and then we would start school at a certain time, and we would be done before lunchtime. So as soon as time hit to start making lunch, there was no schooly things happening. We would go to the beach, we would play outside, the books would be put away, and then it was just like playtime for the rest of the day. So that was our schedule. And we got done everything within that time, quite easily, faster than I thought we would. So
I also love how was still in your mind this thought that like there's school and then there's life. And the school is where the learning happens, and life is where you enjoy yourself and live. And I think that's a really interesting, I think a lot of people first approach homeschooling from that understanding, and then they get a little more into it and they're like, oh, my kids still seem to be learning, even though we're just sitting at this park. Did you notice any shifts around that, or any stories around that you remember with your kiddos out in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember because we first lived in Jamaica when we started homeschooling. And even with those mornings, I remember one of the things was we had bought a book on fish of Jamaica while we were there. And, that was a book that was brought out every night because we would be at the beach and my kids would see a fish and they were like, they come home and they're like, let's look up the fish that we saw today. We want to know what it is and what kind it is. And they were so keen to do that. And then they would notice how, when we were at the beach at a different time of the day, or we stayed later, that they would see different things and why that was. And, there was always those questions. And at night before bed, we would read together. That was something we had always done. And, that still, there was no enthusiasm lost, right? There was no excitement lost. They still wanted to talk about the story the next day, or I'd find things would be quiet and I'd find my daughter, looking for during some time in the day. And she's like curled up in the corner of the couch, reading that book that we've been reading the last 2 nights, because, at that time it was iBooks, because that was the easiest accessibility we had to books. And so you could tap the page and it would read out loud to you. And when she discovered that feature, she would sit and listen to that. Or, those little things that you think, oh, before I'm the one who needs to direct that, but they would find themselves in those spaces and asking those questions themselves outside of that quote unquote school time. So, when you start seeing that and the enthusiasm and what they're asking and then what they want to do, then, of course you have to think this is learning, is it not? This is true learning, right? You can't discount that. So yeah, it happened pretty early in that way.
And I think it's also when your kids are in school, there's not a lot of time to hang out with them otherwise. I know that it still feels like, parents are spending a lot of time with their kids, but when you're home with them all the time, that's a lot more time. I mean, that's sometimes 8 more hours a day that you're getting with your kids 5 days a week. And that makes a big difference for you being able to realize, even if you're that all the learning that really does happen, and your children have more time to get curious about something, right? They're not home from school and just really in a mode where it's hey, can I just veg out? Can I just relax? Because we know what that's like. You have a long day of work or something, you want to go home and you just want to chill. You'd like to do something kind of mindless or your favorite hobby. You don't want to be intellectually challenged. You just want to relax and have your wind down time. So I think a lot of people are initially seeing their kids in their wind down mode more often than not, and so they don't get to see them where they only spent 3 hours doing schooling type stuff. And yet they're still excited. They're still interested. They're still engaged. They're not worn out from the stimulation of being in school and stuff. Right. So they're primed to keep going. And so you get to see that side of them and see it just continuing all day long, and that you don't have to do it. I think that's a really good point, is that I think a lot of people think they're going to have to be the facilitator of all this learning. They're going to have to hold all the knowledge themselves, right? And they're going to have to teach it to their child, bestow it upon them. And you are discovering really early on, hey, these kids seem to be kind of doing this themselves. I would have to stop them from doing this learning, as opposed to feeling like it's all on your shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably what holds a lot of us back as well, right? Because we think we can't do it, or we think we're not professionally trained enough to do that, or we don't know enough even to do those things. And so I think a lot of times that does hold us back on homeschooling or moving forward to an older age, homeschooling or anything like that. It's I'm just not capable enough, when really, so much of it is just becoming a support, or, we can help them to research. We can help to buy books or materials. We can drive them somewhere. We can be an encouragement. We can connect them with a mentor or a volunteer experience. Those things are still vital to their learning. And those are all things that we absolutely can do, even if we don't know some crazy formula or some theory behind, or something on the periodic table of elements that, whatever, I'm just putting it in my head kind of thing. But there's always something someone's not going to know, even teachers, right? There's things that they're not going to know as well. So yeah, I think I don't know if we overthink things, but it's also our confidence, right? But also I think we're also told so often that we aren't capable. So a lot of our parenting and our homeschooling parenting or unschooling parenting is trying to get over those voices that, what are you doing? You can't do this. Nobody, this is out of the norm. This is out of the box. Who are you to think that you could do this? Who are you to go on this crazy ride with your kids? The path has already been set. Who are you to make it hard for them? All those things really come back to the, we're fighting that inadequacy on different levels as well.
Yes, so much. I find that, so I don't think I said it on this video yet, but I was unschooled all growing up. And I was unschooled from birth to 16 when I started going to college. And so I had that frame of reference as well. And I find that when I go out into the world and I'm with people, so many people they wait until someone has given them like the authorization to move forward with something. Like I mentioned different businesses that I have and things like that to people, or be in conversations about, oh, I do this and I do that. And they like, where did you learn to do that? How did you learn to do that? Do you have a degree in that? Where did you go to school to learn about that? Like, you have to be authorized by something external in order to move forward with something in your life, right?
So
we
true.
teach people that you don't know it until you learned it in some sort of formal way. And then we're told, okay, you know it now. You can do this now.
Yeah.
So that's a really big piece that we have to overcome, because what is that? Like, I mean, in the state that I live in, Washington State, there is like a little qualifying course you're supposed to take to be a homeschool parent if you don't have a bachelor's degree or a certain number of course hours or something. So theoretically, I guess you could like take that little, it's like an hour class or something. It's mostly just about the laws for homeschooling is my understanding, but you just take that like little class and then now you can suddenly do this. Well, no parent is going to feel equipped for that after that class. Like, they're not going to feel ready to do this. So I think that's a good segue into that you were feeling that too, right? And you needed resources. And in my understanding, that's why you started this awesome podcast. Most people know you from your podcast, correct?
Yeah, honey, I'm homeschooling the kids. That's my podcast. And that's exactly.
So tell me about it.
Yeah, because, when I first started homeschooling, well, when we lived in Jamaica, there weren't a lot of homeschoolers that I could find because I wanted to connect with it. And I had all those questions like, how do I, my kid's interested in this. Now, what do I do? How am I going to properly prepare them for these things? And then, and then as we moved to South Korea after Jamaica, and I did connect with more homeschoolers, and I realized they were asking the same questions as well. And we get together and discuss those things. And that was where I met my first, in the end, now I realized another family I knew were actually unschoolers. But that actually kind of termed it and said, I had a friend in South Korea who said, we unschool. And she kind of talked about it. And I was like, oh, I get, okay, that was interesting. All right. Okay. And I thought, well, we all have these questions. People keep asking me these questions and I want to learn more. I love podcasts, and there wasn't a lot out there at the time. So I thought this was a great opportunity to create this. And no, I didn't have a degree in podcasting or journalism.
I was going to say, who gave you the authorization, Robyn? Who told you could do this?
Yeah, actually, my husband actually had said, why don't you, because I kept complaining to him, how come there's not more, like, I need to find more information. Now, I wish there was more resources. I wish there was some podcasts and more episodes. And I think he just said, why don't you just start your own? And I'm like, no, I could. He's like, yeah, absolutely, you can. And so, I did. And that became the place where I could connect and ask all those questions that I had, or that friends had, and that I know everyone else had as well. And not only that, I also got to hear the stories of how maybe they learned to come to an answer that worked for them, or they were sifting through the process themselves and the things that helped them, or the experiences that they had. And that also, through the podcast, became extremely powerful, because the stories we didn't before, we're hearing more now, but before we hardly heard any stories about homeschoolers or unschoolers. Like, I think my first friend who said that they called themselves unschoolers. And I think that was the first time I'd heard that. Why? All the studies and the research and those stories are always about kids in school within the traditional framework. And so you always, when it's compared to kids at homeschool or unschool, they don't live the same life. They don't have the same experiences and practices. So of course, things are going to look differently and turn out differently. So those stories need to be told more. And, really that's the biggest part of the podcast, is offering a place for families kids, others to share their stories of their learning journeys and how it's been different and how it's turned out and the, obstacles that they've faced and things that they've overcome and why they've chosen the path as well. I think that's extremely important, especially now as this home learning world is growing and growing as well. We need more of those stories to be told. So
I love that. And that's what builds confidence for people, right? That's what makes them know, like, we're not alone in this. And, I know so many parents will come on, like, into Clubhouse, onto our rooms, and they'll say something about, like, oh, I have an 8-year-old that won't read, or they don't know their, a 10-year-old that isn't willing to learn their multiplication tables, all this sort of stuff. And they feel like it's like they're probably the only one and they're doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. And then when they're able to hear the stories from the other parents, they realize, oh, that's actually super normal. Kids, if you allow your kid to develop naturally, they'll learn to read in a really different wide spectrum of ages. Like maybe they'll learn at 4 or 3, maybe they'll learn at 11. Like it's really okay for you to allow them to develop. And there's just such a big spectrum of what it can be. And the same thing with like math and other things. So the more that we can tell these stories, the more parents realize, like, oh, we're not failing. We're not different. We're just, that's actually the norm for kids to learn to read when they're learning to read at home, right? For them to learn it at whatever time works best for them. So it's not something to worry about. But unless parents are listening to these resources and they're in these communities, they don't know that. They think that they're messing up because they're comparing to schooled children, to schooled families. And they don't know that there's other ways to do it and that it's okay. You're doing just fine. So people have gotten so much benefit out of your podcast, Robyn. It's so cool to be able to point them to, I can point them to, like, oh, Robyn has a podcast about that, or there's a podcast over here about that. And it's just like this built-in little library. And it's a big library at this point. How many episodes have you done?
Oh, I think we are on 109, like launching 119 or 120, close to that. Yeah, and still more to come. Like I have, some sitting on my computer that I have to finish prepping and send out my editor, sending back and everything. So yeah, we have a ton of resources on there. It's a huge library. You're on there. I loved, that was the early days when we were just getting to know each other. I think we should do it again as we know each other.
I think we should too. Yeah. We could talk about more. There'd be specific stories that we could tell that we know are more meaningful for the community now. That was also that was a year ago. That was when I was just getting started with really telling homeschool stories. I didn't really do that in any sort of public way before. It was just, at the cocktail parties and you meet a parent and they hear that you didn't go to school and they're like, I've been thinking about homeschooling. Can you tell me about it? Or like,
secret, yes.
Yeah, and they're like really worried that they're going to be weird, and so they're super excited to meet me. That sort of energy. But otherwise, I hadn't done it. She seems like such a normal person, yet she didn't go to school, right? So then they want to know everything, those families. But that was my first beginning to share, and so I'm just really learning. I feel like now I've just learned what the sticking points are for so many parents. Like the themes are very clear, what the issues are that people struggle with. And there's answers for all of those things, right? But I know more about it now. So we could definitely do a different style interview, I think, for sure. So before we keep going, we have a question here from Cassandra Barker. So by the way, folks, there is a delay between our Zoom and the YouTube. So if your comments come in a little bit, like maybe like 2 minutes later or something like that. But Cassandra's question was, how did you approach answering the kids' questions? My kids ask some really awesome questions, but I feel like I'm weird or bad about jumping on my phone to look up the answers. I feel weird or bad about having to look up the answers on your phone. That's what Cassandra says. So how do you deal with it when your kids have questions you don't know the answer to?
I think that's a great thing. And I think, Cassandra, that's a great question. And I think really embrace that. This is how I look at it. It kind of goes back to our conversation where we're not going to know everything and that there is not one expert in the world who knows everything. And that's actually the beauty of unschooling, is that we are actually not teaching our kids those facts and details. We're teaching them that they're confident and that they can learn even without us. They don't have to wait for that time or that person to give them the answer, that they're capable to do that on their own. And as they grow older and go out into the world on their own, they're capable of all those things, that they can be independent and confident to do those things. So I think it's great when there's a question that I can't answer, because one, I can support and show them that, we don't know all the answers, and that's life. And that's the beauty of life, and that we can find the answers. And then I can also help them to learn how to search for the answers, maybe compare answers, especially with Google. You might get some different things out there, how to reason and understand, what is what as well. And the excitement of it too. But I think the biggest thing is I want them to know that I don't know everything, that I'm not, omnipresent, omnipotent mother who has the answer to all, because I certainly don't. I'm learning all the time, and that's natural, and that's great, and that's good. And, a person, that's not the pinnacle of, knowing all as well. We want to really normalize that, we're all human beings in this life, learning every single day. So I think invite them. Well, let's look it up. You want to look it up with me? Let's grab my phone or the computer and let's look it up and find out the answer. So I think that's a good thing.
I love that. You're right. I think that it goes back to this thought that's the teacher is supposed to know stuff, right? And that's just when it's not true. Teachers usually are just a couple days ahead in the books, right? They're learning the stuff right then so that they can present what's in the lecture or help you with the lesson or whatever. That's the reality for most teachers. And then the second thing is that it's okay not to know. That's okay. When I was growing up, it was before the internet. I'll be 39 next month. So it was well before the internet. So we actually would just have a list, and we'd write down the questions we had, and we'd take them to the library and we would look them up. Sometimes we need the help from the librarian. My mom, I never expected that my mom knew the answer to things unless it was a quick, what's the math problem or something like that I needed help with arithmetic or something really fast, or how do you spell this? If it was something beyond that, I assumed that we would learn it together, because how could she possibly know everything about every question that we had as children? So we always learned together, and she taught us to learn together. And my son asks crazy questions sometimes, and I love them. And I actually ask him, "Do you want to know the answer to that? We can find that answer together." He goes, "No, I was just wondering." So sometimes not all of their questions actually have to be answered. Right. Sometimes they're just wondering out loud, and they actually don't care about the answer. So that's the other thing. It can be overwhelming when you have a kid that's firing 50 questions a day, but most of them might not be worthy for them to actually research the true answer to, which can kind of relieve you too. And the other thing I try to do is I try to make sure that we have a diversity of ways that we look up answers to things. Maybe it could be asking somebody the answer. Certain things will be "Oh, I don't know, let's ask Daddy when Daddy gets home," because I know that that's an area of expertise that my husband might have. Or let's ask Gramps next time we see him, because I know that it's a chemistry question and my dad will know the answer to that, or something like that. Or let's take that to the library and find a book on it. And then obviously let's look it up on the phone or the computer or whatever, or see if we can find a movie on it or something like that. So also teaching that there's lots of different ways to get information. I think that's important.
And I think it's also, it's one of those distinctions also to remember that, many times it's not how we learn or how the structure of school is set up to learn as well. It is, like you'd mentioned, the teacher knows all or teacher knows best. So it's we're expecting them to have that answer. I forget that sometimes, because I also am a public school board trustee. I'm a locally elected public school board trustee in my area. And so when I'm at a board meeting and we're talking about planning or different things like that, and I'm a person who's used to, especially with unschooling, talking out, processing out loud sometimes and asking a question. I don't know the answer, but I'm hoping that bat it around.
Can we talk about it?
Yeah, let's talk about it. And, so, I'll ask, and it's kind of well, what's, what's your answer to this? I could be asked, then what did you want to do? What's the answer? And, it happened recently because I was well, I don't know the answer. I'm actually asking for feedback right now. We don't, and it's funny because also working with a lot of educators, and they say that it is very much about, well, I need to give you the answer. And I have to say, actually, I don't need the answer right now. I just need the discussion. Or I'll give you the endpoint. And it's like, well, we don't have to have the endpoint immediately because it is. And they'll say, well, we have to get to the end. We have to get to this final destination within this specific time, within this year, or, and it's the reminder of like, okay, we actually don't, like, do we really have to, or sometimes it's also, we're working on a project, and because there is still that school timetable expectation, we feel that it has to be completed by the end of a school year, when really the certain project needs 3 years. It needs it needs to be just like teased out for a year before we can come to any implementation or ideas on that as well. But
that's so hard for people.
Hard, so hard. So, we are so used to having that, that scheduled, knowing the answer, all of those things where, so many times it actually doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't need to be that way. And so it's definitely a shift for us as well. So.
Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. But let me see if I have any other questions right now. Oh, no, Cassandra said thank you. So she's hearing her answer still, which is awesome. Okay, so I would love to talk more about this summit that you're doing, because you did one in August, the How to Be an Awesome Homeschooler Summit in August, and it's on Clubhouse. And then we're doing another one March 18th. And so I'd love for you to talk about it a little bit, and also like the themes, and maybe we can get into the themes a little bit as well, so people can know what to expect and learn from it.
So this summit, March 18th, the theme is resilience, reclaim, resist. And we've kind of gone on. So Kelly Edwards of the 90-Minute School Day, she loves alliteration.
Yeah, she does.
So we, really it's key themes that we found have come up in conversation. They've come up in the homeschooling year, and they've been key things for us, or important topics as well, that we feel that have been important for our homeschooling journey or our homeschooling season. And therefore they are holding kind of space for other homeschooling families as well. So the last summit was our vitamin C's, I guess we could call them, which was confidence, calm, connection. And so this summit is the 3 R's. Not reading, writing, arithmetic. That's why it's reclaim, resist, resilience. And
actual real alliteration.
Exactly.
Not pretend alliteration.
Not pretend. That's right. That's right. And so the biggest thing is we have speakers. It's on the Clubhouse format. We like Clubhouses. It's different. It's audio. You can just tune in easily on your phone. You can go for a walk, do dishes. Your kids are watching TV and you can listen to it on your headphones. You don't have to be video ready. You can do it in your pajamas. We can be in our pajamas. And so it's easy that way. But what we also have, it allows us to have live conversations as well. So we have keynote speakers that are speaking to each topic. So we have Ainsley Arment from Wild and Free, and she's speaking to reclaim. Kelly and Edwards and I will be talking about the teen years as well, reclaiming the teen years. We have Karen Ricks speaking to resist. Karen Ricks from Play Your Kitchen Classroom, or Play, she usually talks about play with your food, but Your Kitchen Classroom is her business. And she's a world schooling mom, an unschooling mom who's from the US, but has been living overseas for 10 years or more. They live in Albania right now, actually. So it's always interesting seeing her adventures and her creations. So they have a son that they unschool. We have Karima Akila from the Genius School. And the Genius School is a democratic self-directed learning center. And her goal is actually, because she's an unschooling mom to 6 kids, she was a single mom. Her goal is to make really self-directed learning accessible to all. And sometimes when you can't be home with your child, there's, other ways that you can create community. And that really is part of that for her. So she's also speaking to resist. And then we have Leah McDermott, You're a Natural Learner, who is speaking to resilience. So each of it's a bit of different format, whether it's a keynote with Q&A or workshop style, or keynote with a specific kind of podcast interview style as well. So you can actually go to howtobeanawesomehomeschooler.com and register. And when you register, then you get access to, the digital swag bag and behind the scenes information, those extra goodies that you wouldn't get if you didn't register. So there is, 2 tiers, and but like we just try and, it's a lot of support for the homeschooling community. It's a great place to be and connect and get your questions answered as well. So that's
and it's free, right? People can attend for free.
Yes.
So it's like a homeschool conference online you can download the app onto your phone. You'll be able to listen to it wherever you are that day if you have data connectivity or Wi-Fi, and it's like a free homeschool conference.
Yeah.
The one in August was really amazing like that. And there's so much interaction within Clubhouse as well. You can like message each other. So you actually have the opportunity to meet homeschool families and more at like really like-minded parents that might live anywhere in the world as well during this session. So it's like a really cool thing to be able to do. I think it's so much work that you guys put into them. I'm so grateful for you guys are doing them. Like I showed up on the day of in August and helped them like with the actual day, and I'll do the same thing in March. But it's like, I feel like people are like, oh, Liana's part of that How to Be an Awesome Homeschooler Summit. So she must put in so much work. It's like, I don't, I just show up. Just show up. So you guys do all the hard stuff. It's pretty amazing.
Well,
and it's such a good.
And being there, it's like, it was so good and so helpful, and we truly appreciate it. So I know there's a few more things that you guys will be supporting us on as well, to you and Allison and Sarah. So it's really appreciative, but it's a lot of work for sure.
It is a lot of work. So I want to know more about these themes, like resilience, reclaim, resist. Like, what do you mean by them? Like, what is can you just say like a little bit about why you picked these 3 R's in particular and how it relates to homeschooling?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, reclaim, I think reclaim is a big one. And it can mean different things to different families and different people, but really when it comes to homeschooling, reclaiming is so much about reclaiming childhood again. When you have spent hours in a classroom or in a desk, but then now you have space and freedom to reclaim like the power of play and free play, reclaim nature and being outside, reclaim yourself as, getting back to yourself as well. You can reclaim motherhood, reclaim that healing journey for motherhood where we get in this frantic space and sometimes lose that connection. Reclaiming our connection and relationships with our kids and with ourselves. So reclaim is a big one. There's a lot of topics to touch to on that, but really I think it's reclaiming your individual beingness in so many ways, especially when it comes to homeschooling. So that's the theme of reclaim. And Ainsley.
And I think, I was just going to say, I think so many families can relate to that right now in particular, like some of them still fully in the midst of pandemic stuff, but I think a lot of us are more feeling like we're coming out of this time when we basically we just had to do what needed to be done. We just had to keep it all together. And people are like, okay, what happened to me in all this? What happened to my family in all this? Are we even on track with how we want to be? Or what have we lost? What do we need to grieve? How can we just like choose now to move forward? And I think so reclaim's that's really powerful for so many people right now.
Yeah, it is. And you're absolutely right. It's so timely with what we've experienced the last few years as well. And I think it's a great time to start exploring that and talking about that as well, for sure. And I know Ainsley usually talks about reclaiming childhood and reclaiming nature and so much wild and free. So it's a good fit, but really for this time period, it's a strong word for right now. And I think a lot of us are looking for that too. So that's reclaim. So resist. And resist is a great one because, really, I think resist is something when we're homeschooling, we're talking about just the act of choosing to homeschool is resisting in some ways, right? And resisting is resisting those ideas around learning that maybe have kind of trapped us in a certain pattern, resisting the ideas around in any social structure or any other institutional structure that has us believing that children have to be treated a certain way, that we have to only parent a certain way, that we treat others and beliefs a certain way. There's so much to resist, because then they actually all intertwine, because when you begin to resist, it's also an opening to reclaim in so many ways as well. So yeah, resist is a really powerful one on so many levels as well. So that's resist.
I always think of that, and I mean, I didn't make this up. This is like out in the personal development world, but I always just think of that concept of when you say no to something, you say no to something because of the powerful yes you want to say to something else.
Yes.
It's not just like this thing of like, I say no because I have firm boundaries. No, it's like, no, you look at it and you say, that is not for me because this is, and so you can just lean fully into the thing you actually want. But you're never going to get to that place if you don't say the no's. You're just never going to get there, because you're just going to be on the cycle of all the things you don't want to be doing, right? All the ways you don't want to be. You got to hold that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard for people too. They haven't had any practice oftentimes, right? We got to help them with practicing.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing.
To say no.
Yeah. And I think we also have to say that as well. And that's okay to acknowledge that it's not an easy thing. So many homeschooling parents that I work with, sometimes that's kind of like the bane of it. They feel bad that they're having a hard time, or that they're trying to process it or deschool or work through it. And again, you think that you're the only one, but I actually have a homeschool masterclass, and I have one running right now. And our part of the conversation, I really want them to understand that, it is a process that we're always continuously working through. And when you resist, it's not necessarily going to always be this easy path every single day. But that's also part of the process, is coming to learning about that and working through that. And actually it moves into the next theme, which is resilience, because really that's also what we're building as well, right? Resilience comes out of resisting, facing our fears, working through that, reclaiming what we need to reclaim, and then building that resilience that then carries us forward through all of the years, that supports our kids. So our kids go into their adult years resilient and confident. And it's also not about never facing fears, or never, shielding our kids from ever having anything bad happen to them. It's saying, bad things happen. They do. We aren't, we talked about it in our clubhouse room today. We can't have perfection all the time. We can't have perfection. But when bad things happen, or we're facing fears, there's ways that we can work through it, and ways that we can learn to get stronger, or to continue on, or to learn from this as well. So that's a big part of resilience as well. So I think they fit so well for this time period, those 3 R's.
They really do. The resilience is just so huge for everybody, right? And I think we talk so much about like self-love and having self-confident children and all of that, but so much of it goes back to resilience and knowing that you're safe, knowing that hard things can happen. You can make mistakes. Other people can make mistakes that impact you. And you have the ability to recover from those things and to move forward anyway. Even something as simple as helping a kid learn how to be a good loser in sports, or be a good loser in board games. Like that feels like a minor thing when a grown-up's looking at it, but I know plenty of grown-ups that can't lose a board game with dignity. Right? So those are important skills that you got to learn when you're little, right? And certainly we have big resilience things right now, obviously, with the pandemic and with people's whole lives being flipped upside down. But being able to coach them through that, and as a whole family have more skills around resilience, that's really important.
Yeah, it is really important. And the time I think everyone, it's a practice all of us can connect with right now too. So
that is so cool. Okay, so people have to go to howtobeanawesomehomeschooler.com, right, to get started there, and they will register. Let's see what other comments we have. We have Robyn Kurtz. She goes to our clubhouse rooms too. Robyn's saying back from the when we were talking about knowing the answer, she was saying, I love this. I have anxiety about knowing the answer, and hopefully, and now we'll alleviate that in my kids by modeling that it's okay not to know, right? Yes, it's okay not to know. It's nothing's wrong with that. That's so good.
Did it all. Yeah. We're all learners at all parts of our lives.
For sure. All right. I think we've had a pretty epic conversation here, Robyn. I think we should wrap it up.
All right.
Yeah.
So lunch after this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's lunchtime for you for sure. Yeah. It's pretty much lunchtime for me. We get up pretty early around here. So we need lunch by before noon for sure.
Yeah.
So people should go to howtobeanawesomehomeschooler.com, register for the summit. Also, you guys, I will put links in the comments below to Clubhouse and stuff so that people can follow us on Clubhouse and go there and be part of those rooms if they want as well. And I'll put stuff to Robyn's Instagram and my Instagram and all of that so you guys can be part of this community if you are not yet, because there's a lot of really great conversations like this one happening 4 times a week over on Clubhouse. And I'll be doing probably, at least for the next little bit, like once a week here. We have Kelly Edwards next week. And we have more people coming up. So like it's all getting booked up, which is really great. I don't know if I'll keep it to every week because that's like a big commitment to do one every week, but I'm definitely going to keep this will be an ongoing series either way, depending on what the schedule will be for it. All right. Anything else? Any other good ways for people to connect with you, Robyn, if they want to know more about your work and your master classes and all of that?
Go to the podcast, Honey, I'm Homeschooling the Kids, at my website as well. It's actually imhomeschooling.com, but if you put in Honey, I'm Homeschooling the Kids, you'll find that. Check out the podcast episodes. Reach me on Facebook or Instagram. Instagram is a great place as well. On my website, there's a contact page that you can contact me too. So my website is being updated. So I'll have more information on the wait list for the next masterclass, but you can also just DM me or message that as well. But yeah, social media is a great way to be in touch. So
good. Robyn, thank you so much for jumping on and being our first homeschool influencer interview. It's been really fun getting to talk to you on video this time instead of just audio.
I love it. Thanks, Liana. I think this is a great idea. I'm very happy to be here. So.
All right. Well, have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you next week, and let's see